Hi, Stuart.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you two things. One, I wanted to know how you're feeling on your birthday today.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. Look, I explained it earlier before that, look, I don't hold a birthday as such look, a birthday to me is a reminder, as I said earlier today, that every single day of our lives should be a birthday. It's almost like that thing in Alice in Wonderland where I think the Mad Hatter tells, why do we only celebrate birthdays? We should celebrate unbirthdays. Every day in the year is precious. Every moment of every day in the year is precious. And we celebrate it by really feeling joy and love inside ourselves and gratitude for the life that we've been given. And a birthday like today is just a reminder to me that I am responsible to do this every day of my life during the year. I don't always succeed, but it's just that kind of reminder. And it's been a wonderful day. It started out with, I don't know how many people sending really very beautiful and gracious messages, wishing me a happy birthday, people from all over the world. I mean, that's how my day started today. Texts and emails and, all kinds of things that came across today. So it's been a very good day, a very wonderful day.
I'm so glad to hear. And I wanted to thank you for your deep sharing on Monday about Nityananda. And I revisited reading about him, and the picture of him as a youth just stays with me. The look of bliss on his whole being. And it really created a shift in me as well. So I wanted to thank you for that visceral connection and appreciation for that in-depth into such an incredible being.
Well, as I explained the other day, Nityananda was like an avatar. He was born enlightened. He lived his life that way, constant, sharing of God's energy, spirit, with whomever came into his presence. An amazing being. And I think what's even more amazing is that everyone here can be connected to this being, through myself, through Rudy, that's how I got connected. It was through Rudy. And I cannot tell you how many times he came to me and helped me get through situations that were really difficult. So yes, he was an amazing being. I don't know if he taught anything that he just was. He was just this enlightened being that walked around, lived in Ganesh Puri, Actually, he lived in a tree and they built Ganesh Puri around him.
The avatar that was.
It was an avatar, yes. There aren't too many of them anymore. I mean, some people proclaim themselves to be avatars, and then I usually run in the opposite direction. But he just was. He never talked about himself as being an avatar. He just was, he was this extraordinary being.
He was a giant man. There's actually a little movie clip somehow in my searching of him walking, and he was giant.
The big person in every way. Yes. And I'll say it again, it's a blessing to be connected with a being of that caliber. It's a blessing. And that energy, the energy of Nityananda can work for you every day in your life. You just have to open to it and let it come in. You're connected to myself. I'm connected to Rudy. There's a direct beeline to Nityananda. And only God knows what Nityananda is connected to. You know, I don't know much about his life. But he's always been this great being and great guardian mentor and, in my life. And I told you when Rudy, I didn't know Nityananda from, he said, the only reason I keep you around here, he said, you're so crazy, Stuart, but the only reason I keep you here is remind me of Nityananda when he was a young man. That's what he told me. I don't know.
Stuart, I believe it because when I look at that young photo of Nityananda, I see the young you in the expression. So I concur with Rudy.
And I used to, sit with Nityananda that way. Even today in this class, he was there. And unabashedly ask him for energy, for help to do what I have to do with my life. And every single person here can truly be connected to that quantity and quality, more than quantity, even just quality of energy, and have them work for one in the cosmos, Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Stuart, I have a question, Bob Sink.
Yes, Bob?
So what I'm hearing you say is that the best way to connect with Nityananda or any of these avatars like this is to simply ask. Yes?
Yes. Look, Rudy, Nityananda, any teacher you're connected to. For me, it's, Rudy, Nityananda, Kala Rinpoche, to a degree, Ramakrishna, Sarada Devi, a bunch of teachers. They all live in my heart. And when my heart opens and I feel this depth of gratitude for the guidance I've received in my life, all of these teachers come and work for you. They will set up healing, energy around you. I mean, I remember Rudy, it's a true story. We came back from Big Indian and we left. There was this student of Rudy's with us. We left. He had a camera and he left it in Rudy's car. So Rudy asked me to go get it, and bring it here, and he'll come by and get it. He used to live just next door. And so I went over there, I got the camera, I'm walking back. I got on the corner of 4th Avenue and 10th Street, and I was jumped by a half a dozen kids that ripped the camera out of my hand. I was mugged. I mean, it was shocking. Kill him, pull a knife. It was really very difficult. When I got back to Rudy's ashram, to his house, he looked at me, said, what happened? I told him. And he sat me down and he put 2 guardian spirits, one on either side of me. And he told me, these energies will protect you for the rest of your life. And every time I'm in some difficult circumstance, and believe me, I have been in many of them, over the years, these energies come to the fore and they really protect me. I used to kid around and call them Heckle and Jekyll, but they were very powerful energies that lived with me as protective. They were like guardians, protective guardians that Rudy put around me. And then he took my hands away, it was extraordinary. Out of that nightmare of being jumped by all these kids, he put these protective guardians around me. He took my hands away. He said, you now have Nityananda's hands. I mean, it was extraordinary. Out of absolute horror Somebody's trying to come. Out of absolute horror came one of the most extraordinary transitions I ever made in my spiritual development. But that's having these teachers work for you. But you got to be around them. It's much harder today with COVID, with all the stuff, people live all over the world here, But, I asked Rudy, I said, can I come live in your house? I knew that I needed to be around him. And I'll tell you, and I'll never forget, he looked at one of his students and said, Stuart wants to come live in the house. You think we should let him? And then he looked at me and he said, no, you have to come live in my house. And I gave up a $38 a month apartment in Manhattan, which was like a miracle in itself. And I went to live in his house. And I can tell you, honestly, it was one of the hardest years I ever lived. There were so many people there. I never knew where I was going to sleep half the time. And then it always came back to me, why am I here? I am here to get my training from perhaps one of the greatest masters who lives in the world today. So it forced me to learn how to surrender everything, except I needed to get what he had to teach me. And I remember I was having dinner with Rudy and a friend of his apartment, and this couple, and they said to him, Rudy, how do the people live there? Like, why do they do? And Rudy just looked at him and he said, they're there to learn how to get to God. And he looked at me and he said, tell them, Stuart. And I said, yes, that is the reason I live there. And I told you the story. I once complained to Rudy, I have nowhere to sleep. And he pointed at a weed growing in a crack in a sidewalk in New York City and said, that weed has more courage than you do. And I looked at the weed and I said, holy shit, can you imagine survival in a crack in a New York City sidewalk? This thing has the nerve to grow there. It was a thing that was embedded in my consciousness, how I never have to complain about anything because everything is there to be used to get closer to God. It was an education that was, there was no amount of money that could have paid for that education that I got. And it's how I learned how to use whatever takes place in my life as a reason to grow, not as a reason to defeat myself. And that's having Nityananda, Rudy. I've told you that story where, Swami Muktananda, we were having a satsang in Dallas at the Hilton Hotel. Every day we would go sit with him. And every day he would ask me, when are you coming to visit me in Ganeshpuri? And I had seen, I would say at least a third of Rudy's students, while Muktananda was in America, turn on Rudy, and say, you are no longer my teacher, Baba is my teacher. And Muktananda knew I was very close to Rudy. Even in that movie you made, Baba, Rudy hits me on the shoulder. He said, very good teacher, very good teacher. He said to Muktananda. And I knew what he was doing. He wanted to rip me. And I said, Baba, I don't know. I don't know when I'll be able to come. And I remember after the third time he asked me, I went back to my hotel room. Stuart, you have to have an answer. You're like a jerk. And I sat down and Nityananda came out of my heart and he looked at me and he said to me, you will go to Ganeshpuri when Rudy sends you to Ganeshpuri. And this was an extremely political way of telling Swami Muktananda, you are not my teacher, Rudy is my teacher. And that's what I told him.
Yeah.
And after that session, that satsang, I'm standing in the hallway talking to some people, and one of his students comes to me, one of his disciples came to me and said, Baba wants to talk to you. And I went into, Muktananda's quarters, and he gave me a long and really beautiful orange silk robe and said, you will be a great teacher someday. And it really, I was stunned. Because I told him, I said, I am clear about who my teacher is and who my link to God is. And nobody is going to get between me and my teacher. But Nityananda was the one who gave me that wisdom to go tell this to Swami Muktananda. That's how teachers work for you, but you've got to be open enough to let them do it. And everyone here has a link to, Nityananda, to Rudy. And if you open deep enough, these energies, these amazing beings that are in the cosmos, they come and they work for you. I had that with Kala Rinpoche when after he took his samadhi, I went to his ashram in Sanada in, Bengal, India. And I went to the place where his ashes were buried, and whatever they did there. And I heard his voice say, I've been waiting for you to come. And then I was there for like an hour, sitting and working on myself or with him. And he gave me the whole teachings of wisdom and compassion. This is the essence of Tibetan Buddhism. And it all came out of the cosmos. I didn't expect this. I went there out of respect because this teacher had meant so much to me and had done so much for my life. And then this teaching came out of nowhere. It was extraordinary. But that's how teachers on a higher level work for us. We have to be open to them. Mm-hmm. We have to do the work inside ourselves where we can truly absorb what they are teaching. Otherwise, it just flows right past us. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question, Stuart. Do you think that Rudy was also an avatar?
Rudy worked his ass off from the time he was 6 years old to build the system inside that enabled him to do what he did in life. I don't think Rudy was an avatar. Rudy went through hell in his life. Believe me, I spent a lot of time around Rudy listening to stories about what he went through in his life. And he built that system inside. From the age of 6 on, he was working on himself and he built that kind of system inside himself. No, he was not an avatar. He did the work that God sent him on the earth to do. And in order to do that work, he truly had to get past himself, past all the bullshit that goes on in life, that keeps one from doing deep spiritual practice. And this is what I learned from Rudy. I wasn't born an avatar. I was born in the freaking slums of the Bronx, I was raised on the streets of the Bronx, the South Bronx. And, I had incredible things happen when my father died, and that lesson that I learned, my first great teacher was my father. And I never knew that until 25 years later, And all the teachers and things I went through, unbelievable, and still going through. I don't consider myself to be an avatar, a perfectly enlightened being born that way. I have to work on myself every day, just as all of you have to work on yourselves every day.
Yeah.
And I learned that from Rudy. I watched him and was around him as he was working on himself every single day. You know, he always said, work brings more work. It's really true.
Yeah.
It's really true. Does anyone else have a question? I mean, just be wary of anyone that proclaims himself to be an avatar. An avatar doesn't know they're an avatar. They just live that way. Like Nityananda, he just lived that way. He didn't hang up a sign over his, like that guy in Pashupatinath, a sign in front of his little hut there, saint.
Yeah.
I have a picture right next to me of me sitting with 6 of those Naga Babas.
Yeah.
Saints. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? For 5,000 rupees, I will make you a saint. I once wrote a short story about these two guys that are standing online waiting to see this great spiritual master. And there's a huge line of people waiting to get in. And there's only so many tickets. And they finally get to the ticket booth. And the guy says to them, that'll be $125 a person. This guy talked for an hour. And one of the guys was a flute player. So he started playing a raga that he learned in South India there. I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, again, thank you for the wonderful birthday wishes. Thank you for people that contributed, money and to help me live and pay rent and take care of my expenses. God bless you all. And I love everybody. Everybody really has a place right at the center of my heart. So God bless you all. And there'll be a class. Well, there'll be a class tomorrow evening, actually. Yes.
Oh, great.
I'll see you all. And this weekend, we're having a retreat. And so there'll be no class on Sunday. So God bless you all and thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank
Happy
you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.